The news of a huge rise in the number of newborns subject to care proceedings in England means a lot of sadness and injustice. The research Birth Mothers and Their Children in Recurrent Care Proceedings in England was published in the British Journal of Social Work. The figures were compiled using records held by the Children and Family Court Advisory and Support Service, known as Cafcass. In 2008, around 800 babies were taken into care at birth or shortly after in England. But in 2013 it was over 2,000. The vast majority of these babies have been born to a mother who has already had children taken into care. When social workers find out she is pregnant again, they follow her antenatal care like hawks. Most babies are taken at the hospital, and the report said just 10% of those removed at birth will be returned to their mothers after care proceedings. Now, either the number of appalling mothers has increased threefold in 5 years, or social workers were inept in 2008, or they've recently become far too zealous. If there is real child abuse going on, the state should step in, but I suggest in too many cases social workers are overreacting and indulging their prejudices. They also believe the state, despite the shocking outcomes of children in care, the scandals of abuse in children's homes, has more right to look after your children than you have. But the family is God's primary social institution, predating the state. God's word says, "And he shall turn the heart of the fathers to the children, and the heart of the children to their fathers." Taking a child from its parents is the most draconian thing the state can do. For parents, it's a life sentence. You may not realise the family courts do not dispense justice. Their sole remit is the best interests of the child, and that's defined how the court wants. You may also not be aware that when stripping parents of their children, the family courts do not operate on normal standards of civil, let alone criminal evidence. All is done on social worker assessments. The assessments are backed up by Cafcass. Cafcass officials, social workers, expert witnesses, solicitors for the local authority and for the parents, and judges see each other on a regular basis. Collusion naturally arises, and the income of expert witnesses depends on social services referrals. The basic principle of justice, that it should be seen to be done, is not followed in the family courts. Everything is behind closed doors, and parents robbed of their children may not speak about it on pain of imprisonment. The same applies to the press or any publication. Why? Because they say it's not in the child's best interests to be identified. Actually, it's more the best interests of the system, social workers, their jobs and their empires which are at stake. There are also considerable amounts of money involved. Fees for adoption agencies run into the 20,000s, and babies are easier to place for adoption than older children. Babies are money. That's why social services, having taken children into care, will then quickly ask the court to free them for adoption. One young woman who had been in care became pregnant, and social services popped up because she was involved with them as a child. She said, "I didn't have family support. I didn't have nobody. I asked them for help, but obviously it resulted in me losing my child." You see, social services tell parents what they must do, but they don't actually help them achieve it. Shortly afterwards, this young woman became pregnant again, and she was over the moon, but she had her son taken away from her again by social workers. "It tore me apart," she said. "I just kept crying and crying. Even now, it doesn't get any easier." In my opinion, the church should be doing more to help vulnerable parents in these situations. We are there after all for the dispossessed. Don't send them to social services. Give them your help and support. Remember, the Lord executeth righteousness and judgment for all that are oppressed. That's our remit too. Okay, we could say a lot more, and no doubt we'll return to this subject. If you have a story to tell me, get in touch.